Welcome to another edition of Melanated News You Can Use. And for those that are listening live, thanks for tuning in via Facebook Live. And if you're listening later, you may be listening on our YouTube. So thank you so much for tuning in. So normally what I do with Melanated News You Can Use, I go over my favorite news stories, some things that pique my interest, top stories. But this one I wanted to share, just like I like to get a lot of background information, and then I like to research what's going on. And there is a particular area that I always keep a close eye on. So as I figure out what's going on in Sudan, this area of East Africa, Northeast Africa, I just kind of wanted to share. Maybe this is something that may interest you as well, and you could just learn all together. So I'm gonna probably just go ahead and get the first clip going that I did get to share. There may be some more updates, but right now I need to get this, and I thought, let me share it with you amazing people.
There's been more fighting overnight.
Okay. Civil unrest in Sudan is my top global story. And so because of the time zone difference, we are doing, I am doing this at night, but considering the time it is over there currently, I just wanted to tune in with my people over there. Hopefully they're well. And we'll go from there. Thanks for tuning in. Sudan.
There's been more fighting overnight in Sudan, where rival forces remain locked in a power struggle despite international calls for a ceasefire. The UN says that more than 180 people have been killed in more than 3 days of fighting between the Sudanese army and the country's largest paramilitary force. A further 1,800 have been injured in the violence in the capital Khartoum and other cities. The UN's envoy to Sudan says the warring parties are not open to peace talks. Hospitals, homes and power stations have been shelled. Al Jazeera's Hiba Morgan is in Khartoum.
Okay, Hiba.
Khartoum Airport and the areas around it were battlegrounds on the third day of fighting between Sudan's army and the biggest and most powerful paramilitary force. Explosions, airstrikes, and gunshots are heard across the capital as both sides claim they're making advances in strategic areas, but details on the ground are unclear. Footage released by the Sudanese military shows a number of Rapid Support Forces troops surrendering their weapons and equipment in Khartoum. The army says it's resumed control of state TV and will use it to update the public. It also says it's retaken Merowe Airport in the north. But that conflicts with claims by the RSF, which says its men still control the facility.
This message is for all those who are saying that Merowe Airport is still under the control of the Sudanese army. Right now, we are inside Merowe Airport. As you can see, there is a plane behind us, and we are stationed here until the victory.
The RSF also says an army-led battalion handed over its vehicles in the Eastern Nile, part of Khartoum state. Sudan has been brought to a standstill after attempts to open a humanitarian corridor failed. Fighting destroyed Khartoum's main water station, raising fears of widespread food and water shortages.
Only one still water bottle left. This is the one and only one. And everything is empty now. The water bottle section looks so empty. All the water, all milk, everything is empty here on the refrigerator. 1,000? Wow. See, everything is colors. Nothing left. Food stock is not available.
And hospitals have become targets. Shelling on a lab in this clinic left several people injured and many to evacuate. Doctors say they're running out of medical supplies. Medics say the reported numbers of dead or injured do not reflect the reality on the ground. That's because fighting on the streets makes it hard to reach hospitals or count the dead. Civilians remain trapped in their homes, waiting for the fighting to end so they can feel safe again. A power struggle between Army Chief General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and his deputy Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, commander of the RSF, triggered the outbreak of fighting on Saturday, with neither side willing to back down. While airstrikes continue and the warring sides show no desire for talks, it's the people of Sudan that are paying the heaviest price. Hiba Morgan, Al Jazeera, Khartoum.
Ahmed Abbas Abu Sham is the vice president of the Sudan Doctors Union. He says the situation in Khartoum is dire.
During the last couple of days, the major teaching hospitals in Khartoum have been targeted and bombarded with heavy artillery, and they have been severely damaged to the extent that they are unoperational at the moment, and they are not fit for purpose anymore. Besides that, the remaining hospitals are also dormant and non-functioning because the electricity power has been cut and the water supply has been curtailed. So virtually all the medical institutions in Khartoum are non-functioning at the moment because the doctors and the other medical personnel could not reach the hospitals or other medical centers because the major bridge on the River Nile has been blocked by the military personnel. So the injured persons are either treated locally with primitive measures or first aid measures, and some of them are left to die.
US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has spoken directly to the leaders of Sudan's rival forces, calling for an end to hostilities and urging them to ensure the safety of civilians and aid workers. Earlier, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres condemned the violence, warning of a humanitarian catastrophe. Our diplomatic editor, James Bays, reports.
The UN Security Council is calling for an urgent ceasefire, although behind the scenes there are certainly divisions about how to proceed. The Council was briefed by the UN's top official in Khartoum, Volker Perthes. After that closed meeting, a visibly tired Mr. Perthes spoke to reporters at UN headquarters by video link.
As the two sides who are fighting are not giving the impression that they want mediation for a peace between them right away. Rather, they are calling on the other side to the other side to give up or to surrender, or the other side to be disbanded. So that doesn't sound very much like preparedness to give in to or allow mediation efforts to succeed on short notice.
Mr. Perthes says it's too dangerous for him to travel around Khartoum, but he's in touch by phone with the two rival generals who he believes are both still in the city.
I will be just saying it in public.
In New York, the UN Secretary General has also had talks with each of the two men, as well as with regional leaders.
The situation has already led to horrendous loss of life, including many civilians. Any further escalation could be devastating for the country and the region. I urge all those with influence over the situation to use it in the cause of peace, to support efforts to end the violence, restore order, and return to the path of transition. The humanitarian situation in Sudan was already precarious and is now catastrophic.
The African Union's call for an immediate ceasefire by the two parties.
The three African countries on the Security Council have called for Sudan's airspace to be reopened so that mediators can travel there. The IGAD group of regional countries wants to dispatch a delegation. The Peace and Security Council of the African Union are planning a field mission, and the chairperson of the African Union, Moussa Faki, wants to go to Khartoum to mediate. But for now, Sudan's borders are closed, and in recent days, the airport has been a battlefield. For now, the UN believes its best hope is to expand its humanitarian pauses and eventually turn them into a durable ceasefire. James Bays, Al Jazeera at the United Nations.
Egypt and South Sudan say they've been in regular contact with the warring sides and are prepared to help with peace efforts.
If I had a message to deliver, and I have said this to President Salva Kiir of South Sudan, we are both ready to play a mediation role between our brothers in Sudan in order to reach a truce. This is still going on, and we have endless calls between the Sudanese armed forces and the rapid support forces. We are in constant contact with them to encourage them on a ceasefire, an end to the bloodshed of the Sudanese people, and reaching negotiations that leads to restoring stability once again.
It's not looking good. 180 people lives lost in Sudan. And so I'm just getting into that. And thank you for anyone that tunes in. It's very late. This is news at night. Melanated news you can use at night, but I'm going to figure out what's going on in Sudan. Get up to date. I'm looking at the footage. Al Jazeera brings it. This is how the news should be presented, I think, the best way. I've gone off the information and I've verified this region personally. That's what we call background information. And this area is of extremely high importance, as I like to say, muy importante. So I want to get caught up on the latest, and I thought, why not share it with you here tonight on this 420 Eve, if you caught that. Sudan's unrest is still happening, and I trust certain reporters, because, like I said, I verify. Yeah. So there's a lot going on. And as you can see by my ticker, yeah, everyone wants to know what's happening in Sudan. And I'm just checking to see if my information is pairing up with the news that's coming up out of the region. There comes a time when there's no information coming from this region. So that won't be a good time to catch up. And I'm going to note this. It always seems when it's around these high holy Muslim months. I'm going to say that. I'm going to say it. All right. We're at the presidential palace. I'm going to get the news out for our brothers and sisters in the area because they cut off communications. And we're just going to watch it here. So, great.
Shake Khartoum. Despite a ceasefire announcement, the fighting between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary rapid support forces shows no sign of easing. The humanitarian cost is rising. Hundreds of people have been killed and thousands injured. Healthcare services have been brought to a standstill. After heavy bombardment, hospitals and clinics are closed, leaving patients untreated. Ambulances have been targeted, preventing them from reaching the wounded.
The doctors had to evacuate all the cases, except the cases inside the intensive care units. There is a shortage in staff, medicine and oxygen. The hospital is witnessing a shortage in many things, even the doctors we have left.
The streets are eerily quiet. People say they're afraid to leave their homes. They've been dealing with stray gunfire. Others have been assaulted. Khalid Osman's mother was killed by shrapnel.
He was actually at her house in the living room, trying to take shelter over there, when a sudden mortar landed right outside their house, and she caught one of the shrapnels that came from the mortar and died almost immediately.
With no pause to the violence, Sudan could face a growing hunger crisis. Those who do venture out are trying to stock up on basic necessities.
The truth is that at the moment, it is almost impossible to provide any humanitarian services in and around Khartoum. There are calls from various organizations and people trapped asking for evacuation. For the past 4 days, people have been out of water, food, Electricity has been rationed, in some places totally disconnected.
The violence is a power struggle between Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, who commands the Rapid Support Forces. Once allies, now the two generals disagree on when and how the paramilitary unit will be integrated into the armed forces. That's the last barrier in the shift to a civilian-led government.
They dashed all the dreams of the youth and the Sudanese revolution. The revolution that started peacefully has now become a fight. I'm disappointed.
Both generals say they're committed to the transition agreement and are blaming one another for the escalation. Just weeks ago, there was a sense of hope that long-running negotiations had succeeded, but now Sudan once again faces an uncertain future. Rahila Mohammed, Al Jazeera.
Well, joining us live from Geneva is Martin Griffiths. He's the United Nations Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator. Mr. Griffiths, always good to have you on Al Jazeera. Thanks very much for your time. We know how busy you are right now at a very difficult moment in your organisation's history. I mean, even before the current conflict, you stated 1/3 of the population, nearly 16 million people in Sudan, were in need of humanitarian aid. So how will what's happening now impact on the work to alleviate that stress that many Sudanese are now experiencing?
I'm glad you mentioned that, because it is a massive humanitarian aid program. 16 million people, as you say, shut down, totally shut down in these last 5 days. People aren't moving, supplies are being looted. We don't know what stocks are left. We've all heard about the terrible situation in the frontline hospitals, 16 down in Khartoum and 16 more ready to shut down too. But you know what I want to say very strongly today is this. Yes, we want to get back to that humanitarian aid program, but right now, the focus has to be relentlessly and with anger on the fact that people are forced into this lockdown across the country. I cannot begin to imagine the circumstances that those people are facing. 40-degree temperatures, Ramadan, fasting, close to Eid, food stocks running out, no medical supplies, ceasefires that don't work. There's one message that we all believe, I am sure, to take from that is these two gentlemen, the two generals in charge of these two battling forces, need to knock it off. And they need to do what they say they want to do, which is to respond to the needs of their people. And without that, what credibility can they have?
Through the 5 days that we've been following this story, we've been obviously listening to many voices of the people, because really to understand what you're talking about the problems and the suffering that many are experiencing, you have to really go to the source, which is people that can actually communicate with us through the technology that is the internet. And in the cities, they're being able to tell us about the fact that there is a lack of food, a lack of water, and they, as you say, the lockdown during the conflict is very difficult for them. Where do you see the bigger problems outside of the urban areas? Because obviously your organisation does get aid to those in refugee camps and the like. Where are the big hotspots at the moment that you're worried about?
We're worried about those 60 million people who we know where they were before Saturday, and we knew what they needed before Saturday. Now we don't know what is available in terms of the supplies that they need, nor do we know clearly enough whether they have moved, which is what people do when they're in distress, as you point out. And there's one more thing. The UN has 4,000 or so staff in Sudan because precisely of those circumstances that you've just been describing. And thank God Al Jazeera is going to the heart of the personal stories of deprivation. We are beginning to lose touch with our own staff and our own people.
Hello?
In addition, we're not able clearly to get the kind of picture to answer the important question that you made. Another reason, as if we needed one more, to have this terrible period of failed ceasefire promises stop.
Before we talk about your UN stuff, because I'd like to expand on that, I'd like to just go of the thought of Darfur springs to mind when we talk about hotspots. It was already a problem area, already an area that many people have been worrying about for more time than we can think of. What sort of crisis is developing there that you were looking after that you think could get worse?
Well, the worry that we had was a classic one, produced by, as you say, decades of conflict, deprivation, food security for a start. We've heard that the World Food Programme has shut down their operations. They lost 3 staff, tragically. Getting food to people is a constant need in periods of humanitarian programs, obviously. And if you're not delivering, people don't have food, they run out of food. So that's very urgent. Number 2, in Darfur and elsewhere, it's very, very telling that it's the health system that's been the most destroyed by these events. You have covered that with great graphic and illustrative stories. Medical supplies, restocking, that's essential. And behind that is protection for people. We've all heard reports, you have reported them too, of sexual violence against people. We have our own staff who've had their places looted, their homes occupied by people from these militaries. We need to have an understanding of what is available for us to return to work. And we can only do that if we can move. And if we can move, we damn well will.
You've practically answered my next question, which was about your UN staff and the fact that you can keep in touch with them as far as you can for the moment. But let's take this wider then. In my last question, diplomats are working on trying to communicate with both generals. They're on the periphery. They're outside of Sudan. The airport is closed. Nobody can get in, not even the regional leaders and politicians. How do you think this is going to play out? Because it seems to be a very difficult situation for the international community to try and, you might say, knock heads together.
Look, yes, we're seeing that phenomenon which happens at times of massive crisis like this, in which international attention is focused, thanks to you and others. International diplomatic efforts are legion, that's great. Coordinating them is essential so that they all ask for the same thing, including access to the country. Let's see what's happening in Port Sudan. Are there supplies still there? Can we move them to Darfur and elsewhere? But we're at that inflection point now where international attention and anger should also and is being channeled into practical suggestions for access, for relocation of staff who need it, and for renewal of our obligations, which is to provide aid to the people of Sudan. And if this isn't happening, then it's a terrible comment on the prospects for that.
Whoa! I just saw the updated number. We went from 180 to 270.
Sudan has in spades, as you know, is an amazing civil society, a heroic set of organizations, doctors and others. Thank God for that. We need them now, and they're there, and we rely on them.
We'll see what happens in the coming days. It's always good to get your insight, Mr. Griffiths. Martin Griffiths there, the Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator. Thanks for your time, sir.
Thank you.
Sabrina Shamin is Deputy Operations Manager for Sudan for Doctors Without Borders. She says they're struggling to operate.
At this moment, so MSF in Sudan providing life-saving impartial medical care, but at this moment, our team cannot move. We are just stuck in the conflict. MSF confirms also there is looting in one of our premises in Darfur on 16th of April. So we don't have any supply at this moment. We might have around a week of supply to run our hospital. But after that, we don't have any other supply. there is no possibility to move. There is no possibility to move supply, as well as our team is quite stuck. We are always ready to respond, but at this moment, due to insecurity, our team is not able to move at all. Also in Al Fashar, we received around 220 wounded patients in our hospital. Among them, 34 unfortunately died. There is limitation of supply. We could not do any supply for first 2 days. Yesterday, we managed to do some stocking, but it is not adequate enough. We need our supply. We need safety of our staff to able to move and go to the health premises. At this moment, it is not possible. So if it continues, we don't know how the future looks like. We have a limited stock. We could run at least our some of our premises, but we don't have unlimited stock. Might run out in a day or two. At this moment, it is not very clear.
Okay, so I had to get my update. I just thought I would share that this evening. It's not looking good. I would love to give my analysis at this point. I would love to be able to, I need to check in, but I needed to know what was going on. This is probably the number one international story that's been teetering from 2 to 3, 5 to 6, maybe top 10. And it's moved its way to number 1. This is Sudan. Khartoum, Merowe. Khartoum, probably that airport, when you start talking about Merowe, International and the army taking over there, we shall see. Because once that one's down, you can pretty much count, unless they're going to do some land transportation. Then once the air is cut off, that's between the people of Sudan. And this is probably, if it could launch into a 30-year war. It depends, because I think the world policing needs to stay out of it. But somebody gonna be sneaking some weapons in. So this is the army and the paramilitary, and this is a very, 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 very serious matter. I think I've done as much as I can to talk about the importance of this area. People don't see the interconnectivity, but just like most things I see on the internet nowadays, especially when it comes to news, it's all tone deaf entertainment junk gossip. But this area not having the supplies, the medical supplies is one thing, and then another for the food. And this is an area where this revolution was sparked by the rising cost of food. Bread going up to our equivalent $9 a loaf. And just skyrocketing prices, inflation in that area. And I watched these people and the civilians, as we're transitioning to civilian government. I wish they would keep the civilians out of it. Sudan is already fairly young. The transition from the civilian government, that's part of this. But this military, I don't know how they fell apart. I think there may be some alliances there. I really want to get a little bit deeper into what's going on, because like the young interviewer said, we were moving along. I was getting good news, but I also know when I get good news out of Sudan, I always know that it's about to be something that just catches the world's attention. But what I did not expect for the past couple of days for this to be number one. And then also, if you notice, I played 2 clips from Al Jazeera. And each clip, they were interviewing 3 or 4 guests. That is not, this is number one. This is top. You don't see too many nations. This is Sudan. Like, wow. So let's get a little bit deeper into what all this is about. So thankful because I'm putting this on Facebook and YouTube. Some people may not even know to look for this story. So, man, hopefully get through on Facebook because I can imagine the communications in this area. I'm taking this very, 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 very seriously. So I don't care if it's late here. We're talking about different times. Actually, let me take a look. Let's see what cartoon. Did I keep it? And go ahead and add it back. I was like, oh gosh, okay. Go ahead. So right now in cartoon, it is 104 degrees, and sunny. Whoa! But it's 7 a.m. there. It's gonna go from 79 by 11 a.m. It'll be 101 degrees. By 3 p.m. there, it'll be 104 degrees. And just slight wind gusts, 13 miles an hour. It's going to get up to what? Here's your weather report for Sudan in the midst of all this fighting. It's nearly 7 a.m., 79 degrees there. Today's going to get up to 104. Friday's going to get up to 106. Saturday's going to get up to 107. Sunday's going to get up to 110. Monday going to be another 110. Tuesday going to be 108. Wait. Excuse me. That's Wednesday. Tuesday going to be 111 degrees. Wednesday will be 108. Then it's going to go down to 98 on Thursday. Back to 103 on Friday. 105 on that Saturday. The hottest day is going to be on Tuesday. Oh my gosh. That's their high. And their low is 75 degrees. Whoa. I just had to get that out there. I'm going to keep abreast of what's going on in that area, and I like to watch it on Al Jazeera, so I'll be sure. Let me know if you're here. Please feel free to comment, and we're going to explain. We're going to get to the bottom of this because everybody is paying attention. The world is watching, except for this one segment of the population that just seems to be so tone deaf and out of touch with the world. I don't know what's going on, but that particular group, I'm just delineating from that because this is some real stuff, and this is a part of the global transition happening in the world. So we really need for this to be understood, and we're gonna get right into it. So thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you all that tune in, listening live or later.
In Sudan, rival forces remain locked in a power struggle despite international calls for a ceasefire.
It's an all-out battle for control of the country between Sudan's army and a paramilitary unit known as the Rapid Support Forces, the RSF, led by men who used to be allies. Hundreds of people have been killed, and hundreds have been injured. There's fighting in different parts of Sudan, but it's heaviest in the capital, Khartoum. There have been attempts at a ceasefire, but they haven't lasted. There have been air attacks and shelling. The airport has been severely damaged. There's no running water or electricity. Supplies of food are running low.
This ridiculous battle that has civilians caught in the middle. We have nothing to do with this.
So what's behind the fighting? Well, people in Sudan have been struggling to set up a democracy after decades under one-man rule. Omar al-Bashir came to power in a military coup in the late 1980s, became president, and stayed for 30 years, until people rose up and demanded that he step down. Then the army took over, and people didn't want them in charge either. So after pressure from protesters, the army agreed to share power with different political groups in a transitional government. The idea was that it would oversee a transition to a democratic system. But 2 years later, the army kicked out the prime minister and seized power again.
The people in Sudan seem to be trapped in this limbo, and they're going round and round in a circle that involves the same people, with no clear path or trajectory on how they can actually start to plan for a transition.
There have been ongoing talks to make that transition happen between the military and political groups representing that pro-democracy movement. But a major reason the process is being held up is because of an underlying rivalry between the army and the rapid support forces that have become like a second army. And many people see this as a personal rivalry between the army's leader, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, who's effectively the leader of the country, and the leader of the RSF, General Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, widely known as Hemeti. The thing is, for years, both men were on the same side and had been since the war in Darfur. Hemeti led a militia at the time widely known as the Janjaweed, and they were used by al-Bashir.
Okay. The Janjaweed. I'm trying to figure out where this is the Janjaweed. Pay attention, okay? This is the Janjaweed. My gosh.
Bashir's army to fight rebels in the region of Darfur.
They were created to protect the upper echelon of the military and the senior commanders.
They're accused of carrying out war crimes there, and al-Bashir actually got charged with committing genocide. In 2013, the militia were rebranded as the Rapid Support Forces and worked with the army on different missions. Then, in 2019, Hemeti and General al-Burhan joined up to get rid of al-Bashir. And during the big pro-democracy protests, the RSF and the army were accused of killing more than 100 people. But since then, the RSF has been acting a lot more independently, and they've grown more powerful.
They were able to establish vast investments around the country and outside the country, especially in the gold trade.
These two main actors, the army and the rapid support forces, were able to collude, now successfully for about 4 years to stay in power themselves, but there was always that core tension about who was the top dog between them.
So that brings us to the fighting right now. As part of Sudan's transition to democracy, there have been talks about integrating the RSF into the army, but they can't agree over the timeline. The army proposed 2 years, while the RSF wanted it to be 10.
The army, had been making a stand. They realized that the rapid support forces have been growing. The head, General Hemeti, has political ambitions himself, and I think there was a sense that if they did not somehow force the rapid support forces to agree to integrate and to go under them, that this force would keep growing and grow out of the control of the formal military.
It's unclear who started the fighting, but on April 15th, both sides started trading accusations that they had attacked each other's bases in Khartoum. Then they fought to take control of the presidential palace, the airport, and the state TV channel. The army has air power, and they've been hitting RSF bases in the capital, many of them in residential areas. The RSF don't have planes, but they do have anti-aircraft weapons, and they have about 100,000 men. There have been plenty of calls for the fighting to stop, from Sudan's neighbors, the African Union, the UN, the EU, the US, and the UK. And there could be some leverage from countries like Egypt, which has been a close ally to the Sudanese army, and on the other side, the UAE, which has ties to the RSF. But there's no sign that either side wants to back down.
Right now, for a lot of people, it's a period of confusion. It's a period of uncertainty about what's going to happen in the next few minutes, the next few hours, the next few days. And it's a period of war, and they have nowhere to turn to.
A lot of people in Sudan are scared, heartbroken, and frustrated. Their country keeps getting derailed off that path towards democracy. It's a hope that seems even more distant now.
I told y'all it's not looking good. It's not looking good. When they start talking about uncertainty, Great. What's up? What's up? What's up? So it's late. I'm trying to keep the all kind of light systems going over here, but this is what's happening in Sudan, and so as I tune into global world news, I just wanted to share this in real time because it is important. These are stories that I've talked about in the past, and I wanted to keep it going, especially on this broadcast. And there's so many stories right now, and I've been so happy to share them and break it down. And there's a lot going on. Just really trying to keep it together. So, hi, who's here? What's up? What's up? I know it's news at night, and like normally, it's 420 Eve, but whatever. But twas the night before 420, and we got too much light. I'm trying to make sure we got the lights, keep the lights on around here. But yeah, so I wanted to share this story from Al Jazeera because they get the most objective news. I don't need all the side commentary. I really don't care. So it's something else going that's pretty, really, really, really cool. And I didn't get all my news stories in yesterday. We were on for 2 hours, but it's all good because I'm really interested and I like to watch it. And I'm like, I can watch it and share it with you all in real time as I'm learning and getting updates in this region. But this is not good news. I was kind of like going through my broadcast yesterday and checking global news. And then I was like, wait a minute, because I was getting word that some good things were happening in Sudan as the transition to a civilian-led government. And then all of a sudden, and the UAE really is supporting the Janjaweed? Like, let's not call this the RSF. Let's not do that. If it's the Janjaweed, it's the Janjaweed. And the army, so the army wants to give them 2 years and they want 10? They want 10 years? What is with this? Like, come on. Like, in this democracy, it's 4 years, 10 years. It's like 2 year, small terms, 6 year terms. Like, I'm so disappointed that it broke down. It's like, keep hope alive, but ay. And I don't know if anybody who's been watching when we were doing this playback, but the key word there was gold. You don't think this got anything to do with all this is going on in the world and the war in Ukraine, and you don't think this has anything to do with that? You don't think this has anything to do with Boko Haram in West Africa? Okay, you don't think this has anything to do with our standard of money weakening, Russia? Like, this all has been happening at the same time, and I'm like, all right, Russia's at war, and what does this mean for Sudan? And we are just now getting it now, so I'm noticing the shifts. And don't forget, we had an idiotic president and Donald Trump that did an arms deal with Saudi Arabia. So you don't think that has any... What does this have to do with me as an American and my taxpayer dollars? Wow. So and then I always say, don't forget, we got people out there with the woke tap, and y'all love the story of Cleopatra. This is that area. This is the area of all that. Your Tutankhamun, Tessu, Ramses. This is your area of all that. Okay, Tutmosis. All right, Nefertiti, Akhenaten. All right, this is that region. Okay, so I don't understand how people running around wearing the Ankh. I'd be so confused, and I'm trying not to be. So in order to not be confused, I'm just gonna go ahead and watch some objective. I don't even want to. I might want to check and see what BBC is saying. We might want to check what BBC is saying. So thank you. Let me know if you're here. Say hello. Oh, great. BRICS is forming. Well, You got Brazil, Russia, India, China, and don't forget the K and Brick. Are you talking about Brick Nation? That Kenya is up in there too. What's S? What's S? Singapore. Let's make it up. Cause I don't know. What's S? You mean BRIC? Brick Nations? Don't forget that K for Kenya, and then the S. Let me know. Comment, and let me know. All right. I'm gonna try to transition out of the global news, but I almost have to see. I almost kind of have to see what the BBC is saying because they a little biased. So I want to know. But damn, I'm so saddened by that because if they're hitting the capital city, that's not good. And you're talking about the thickness of right in the thick of Sudan's the capital, then the presidential palace. I'm not sure if they said who took over the presidential palace, but I believe the army has the Merowe International, and I'm going to, for the sake of the people, that the Janjaweed is not taking over the presidential palace. But I could imagine. But I know the army's got a stronghold on that, so I'm imagine that's what the report said. And for some reason, I want to. And I don't know. I haven't seen any of this in my top American news feed, so I can only imagine. And so hopefully, yeah. It's not looking good. It's not looking good. No, by no stretch of the imagination is it looking good. There's only certain news stations I will even trust for any of this information. So bear with me as I get over to the next clip. This is Lila Brown, Lady Lila Brown with Melanated News You Can Use. Hi, what's up? Oh, you're tuning in from Las Vegas. Welcome. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you. All right, we're going to get into it.
Of course, the situation in Sudan, the fighting between those two military groups in and around the capital, Khartoum. Well, in the last couple of hours, the general of the Rapid Support Forces in Sudan, that's one of those military groups, has said on social media that he approves a 24-hour ceasefire. This is General Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, tweeted this. He's spoken to the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken there, agreed a pause to ensure the safe passage of civilians and the evacuation of people who are injured. That's what many international groups have been calling for, and lots of international diplomatic efforts have been trying to achieve.
What? Do not tell me, as a US citizen, this does not matter. Wait, what? Do not tell me, as a U.S. citizen, this story doesn't matter. Something kept saying, go over. Thank you, Al Jazeera, but what? I have to pause. Wow. Now we get a ceasefire? I just tuned in like yesterday. Let's do this. Oh, okay. Secretary Blinken can initiate a temporary ceasefire. Janjaweed responds. Okay, I see where we're going. I'm trying to make sense of this. Looks like we're going to have to do this a little bit more often. Whoa. I got so stuck right now because if you heard in the reports, before we get into this further, if you were listening to the reports I've been sharing, it said there's uncertainty. The civilians are disappointed, and the Janjaweed listens to the United States. That's what they consider a friendly nation. What in the entire? I was not expecting that. I'm sorry, that caught me off guard. I'm trying. That's why we get to the thick of it. Damn. They said, all right, that's enough. Yes, that's what I'm saying. Like the whole world's starting to pay attention. Like, okay, wait. I thought we was changing over to a civilian government for democracy. Damn. Okay.
Achieve just that, but the Sudanese army, or the other military group involved in this fighting, did release a statement denying any knowledge of this proposed ceasefire. There has been days of fighting now between these two rival forces. Almost 200 people have been killed, 1,800 or so injured is the last numbers we have. Khartoum has seen airstrikes, shelling, and heavy small arms fire there as well. And this is just some of the latest pictures, these released by the RSF paramilitary forces. This is actually around Khartoum International Airport. You can see the black smoke there rising from a burning plane there. Right, let's take a look now at the area more closely. Sudan is part of Eastern Africa, known as the Horn of Africa there, has a history of instability. And the area's Intergovernmental Authority on Development will be sending presidents of South Sudan, Djibouti and Kenya to the country to try and broker some sort of permanent peace there. Now, as I mentioned, the fighting here is between army units loyal to two different generals who've they both between them been in charge of the country since 2019. 2019 was when the longtime leader Omar al-Bashir was toppled. These are the two men. On the left, Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo, better known as Hamiti. He is Sudan's deputy leader. He commands the paramilitary force called the RSF, the Rapid Support Forces. That's the group that we've heard from in that tweet saying that they're in favor of a 24-hour armistice. On the right-hand side is the de facto leader, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. Both of them want control of Sudan's military, but they disagree on how to restore civilian rule to Sudan. Let's go live now to Nairobi. Our correspondent, Mercy Juma, is following events from there. Hi, Mercy, what's the latest?
Come here, check this out. So, this is my account.
Oh, no. Did BBC really just hit us with a fucking commercial?
So
they really just hit us with a freaking commercial right when the sister's about to give her report. Here we go.
We put it about the information that is going on about a 24-hour truce or armistice that is being looked into. On one hand, we have the leader of the RSF, that is Hemeti, saying they will abide and are ready to go on with the plans to necessitate a 24-hour putting down their arms for people to be able to move around, and most importantly for the wounded or injured to be able to be access medical assistance. But there is a lot of conflicting information because, like you say, the armed forces through their Facebook page, the spokesperson say there is no such thing as an agreement to down their tools for 24 hours. Yet in an international media house, General Burhan said that there is something like that and they are willing to do what? To put down their arms for 24 hours. So still a lot of uncertainty. We don't know if this 24-hour truce will actually happen and whether they will be able to access the people who are injured and the people of Sudan will be able to access humanitarian assistance. Already we have reports of more than 180 people being injured as of Monday evening. The numbers are definitely up because the fighting has been going on. And other than that, we are seeing key humanitarian organizations and agencies folding up and leaving major parts of Sudan where people need assistance. We're talking about organizations like ICRC, WFP, and even Save the Children, whose facilities have been attacked, whose workers have been attacked. So a really, really fluid situation at the moment, which we're still watching.
Mercy, just remind us, why are these two military groups fighting?
So these military groups are fighting because of power. it's basically a struggle for power. Taking us back to 2019, both generals really worked together, fought on the same side to topple the then president Omar al-Bashir. And then the coup happened in 2021, and there has been calls for a transition in Sudan from a military government to a civilian government. And that's where we are right now. But how this transition is going to happen is what is causing all this unrest, because for the two generals, it's really important for each one of them to know where or what position they will hold in this new civilian government that everybody is looking into, that Sudan is going into. So it's basically, the disagreement on who does what or who takes what position when that transition happens from a military rule to a civilian rule. So that's why the two are fighting.
Mercy, thank you very much for that. I know you're keeping across the latest updates there, and we'll speak to you again later on. And now, though, Massa Baba is a journalist and director of the Ayin Network, a non-profit independent media outlet which has been covering Khartoum for the past 12 years. He described the situation on the ground.
Well, since the morning of the 15th, the situation has been very dire, and it's switching to full-on war between them. At first it was just a few clashes at the army headquarters and in southern Khartoum, but soon after that, the airstrikes started and turned into a full conflict. So right now, residents are stuck in their houses for the most part. It depends on where you are. If you're in the Khartoum locality, you're going to be stuck indoors because the constant ammunition being fired and airstrikes. And this morning, we're getting reports of airstrikes and even in Khartoum North and Bahri and Durman. So the closer you are to the center, the more people are kind of locked in. But the more you go to the outskirts, things are a little bit more quiet. But still, the issue of the logistics and getting supplies and, power being out for days at a time, still from the 15th, from morning, with no coverage and covering the conflict now is completely like when, there were the protests and the marches and stuff. It was a lot easier to get information from the ground, but people are holed up right now. So we're depending on a lot of eyewitness accounts of, where planes are going, where the airstrikes are happening, where the shelling is happening, where the troops' movements are. So we're trying to just follow that minute by minute.
I see. And what's your thoughts on how we get some kind of resolution to this?
Well, unfortunately, this was kind of an inevitable clash that was going to happen because of the long history of the central government using militias and militarizing communities. So now it's almost like one of the historic moments in Sudan. There's never been a battle like this in Khartoum throughout its history, since the days of the British colonialism, and but since those days, Khartoum hasn't seen this kind of fighting. Okay. Unfortunately, it seems like both are on a one-way path towards dominance, and two objects can't occupy the same space at the same time. So the negotiation policy will need to frame it as what's going on right now, which are war crimes. When we see the amount of shelling and stuff that's going on. So it's a survival tactic on both sides, on Hemeti's side and on Burhan's side. Political and as far as their forces, and the huge, economic interests that go along with their forces. So they're trying to get the upper hand right now. When you follow their statements and their media and what their discourse looks like, they're trying to form themselves as the ones who are saving the country from these outlaws. Both are saying the same thing. And basically they're trying to get in good terms with the pro-democracy camp, the bigger pro-democracy camp that includes, the protesters, includes the citizens who are kind of, at this point, there's no confusion as to why we need civilian government and why we need democratic change. Every single citizen in Sudan kind of sees that clearly right now.
Thanks to Mossa Baba for talking to me just a little earlier on. I just want to bring you a couple more lines that we have, the very latest on the situation there. We've got an update from Emmanuel Gunza, our correspondent, talking about the UK and US foreign secretaries meeting. This is on the side, they're at a big conference, G7. They're meeting on the sidelines. They've had discussions, and two things specifically they've expressed their concerns about. First of all, the assault on the European Union ambassador to Sudan and the attack on a US embassy convoy in the capital, Khartoum.
Oh,
The US and the Foreign Secretary of the UK have been in conversations about the situation in Khartoum, expressed concern specifically about those two attacks on the European Union ambassador and on the US convoy, as well as talking, of course, more broadly about the devastation of the fighting itself. They are engaged in efforts to broker some kind of ceasefire, it would seem, because we've heard from one side that they have been in talks with Secretary Blinken about that 24-hour armistice. So high-level international talks underway to try and reach some kind of peaceful resolution to the situation.
Oh my gosh. That broadcast literally within 10 minutes of that reporting literally went from U.S. Secretary of State Blinken communicating with the Janjaweed about a ceasefire, at least for 24 hours, so that there could be people, such as civilians, allowed safe passage and maybe some medical, humanitarian aid, hopefully. That might be pushing it for this area at this point. And as the UK and the US sends over an envoy, a convoy, it's attacked. So that must have been through the army, because the Janjaweed was on board. Whoa. Yeah. This is not looking good. I had another short report. That's why I went with the long one first and the most up to date. Yo, man, this is crazy. Yo, this is really crazy. This is the latest. And then I'm moving on back to U.S. news, because I want to talk about the black mayors convening right now. So
fighting in Sudan, despite a ceasefire that was meant to have been agreed upon between two rival military groups. This is the latest footage. You should see it in a moment from the capital, Khartoum. Heavy gunfire, explosions, warplanes were still being heard around the city. Hopefully we'll be able to show you those pictures in just a moment.
They didn't honor the ceasefire.
Over the last few days, hundreds of people have been killed in the violence. The latest fighting is because of a power struggle between these two men, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, president of Sudan's military government, and on the left, that's him on the left, and on his deputy, should I say, Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo, is leading the country's biggest paramilitary group, the RSF, on the right. The UN has now described Sudan's humanitarian situation as catastrophic, with mass displacement of people. The Red Cross has echoed that concern.
The truth is that at the moment, it is almost impossible to provide any humanitarian services in and around Khartoum. There are calls from various organizations and people trapped asking for evacuation. For the past 4 days, people have been out of water, food. Electricity has been rationed, in some places totally disconnected.
Well, to get the very latest, I spoke to Emmanuel Igunza, who is our senior Africa reporter based in Nairobi.
Simply, both the National Army, led by the de facto leader of Sudan, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, and then on the other side, the RSF commander, Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo, simply think that they can win this through the fighting that is continuing. And the situation is really dire. This is a fifth day of heavy fighting, particularly in the capital Khartoum, and it's happening in residential areas. And as you've heard there from residents, many of them, this caught them by surprise. they've run out of water, they've run out of food, and many of them, other nationalities, aid agencies have been requesting for evacuation, but that has not happened because this ceasefire that was supposed to be in place for 24 hours to enable humanitarian assistance to get to people has simply not happened, and the fighting has spread into other parts of the country, particularly in the west, in places like Darfur. And the worry now is that if this continues, then this country could slide into a full-blown civil war.
So what will it take, do you think, to get the two sides together to talk?
It is not very clear just what it will take, because both the two generals who are fighting seem to be very apart in terms of how they see this conflict playing out or ending. But there is a lot of international pressure. We've seen over the last few days pressure coming in from the US Secretary of State, who's also met the UK Foreign Secretary. We've seen the African Union and also leaders from the region, neighboring countries to Sudan, are expected to go into Khartoum if the ceasefire holds and if the airport is open, but at the moment it doesn't seem that the fighting is likely to end.
No, it's not. It's not. When you start attacking, nah, that is not okay. Yo, that's hella creepy. That's hella unsettling. And I'm so disappointed to hear that. I think a lot of people. I am going to leave us off tonight with another story, but this one's stateside. It's domestic, and this is the largest convening of mayors of Black American descent descending upon Washington, D.C. Mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, is included in this conference. Or at least slated to be. And so is, various Black mayors such as Mayor Eric Adams, Lori Lightfoot coming out of Chicago, as that's transitioning and changing. And they said more than 80 Black American mayors. So I am just catching up on this as well. And I thought, why not share it with you all? We can all learn together. This is the African American Mayors Association. And as I'm following Madam Mayor Karen Bass, I wanted to share this as well. So we'll be hearing some remarks. I'll follow up. This is very exciting. Great things are happening. Yeah, we also have, of course, I'm sure Atlanta is in there somewhere. Then there's other major Black politicians such as, Governor, the Black governor of Maryland, I believe Wes Moore. These people, I'm I'm getting into it. It's a lot. We making some strides. So also, I see Baltimore Mayor, Brother Scott there, Brandon Scott. Yeah, Quentin Lucas. I'm looking. Is he there? The mayor also of Jackson, Mississippi, and then we have Houston. We're calling it the Big Four. Again, I've been noting that, and I'm glad Chicago didn't mess that up. Oh my gosh. Was really okay. Fingers crossed on that one. But I'm learning a lot about all these various mayors. I think this is a great thing, and I'm glad to see that they have this association. This is the 9th annual conference, so we'll get right into it. Gonna get into this speech, and I just want to hear. I'm not sure where we're going with this, but I know Secretary Fudge will be joining in, and I know Karen Bass, Mayor Madam, was a part of this for the homelessness solution. So we'll get into that. Let's see what they talking about. Let's see what they got. As you can see, if you see your mayor, say something. My mayor's there, or should be around somewhere. I'm following along. I don't know if they're gonna have all 80. I don't know if they're gonna have all 80. So can they all fit all 80? More than 80? Look at them.
Well, good evening. We want to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to the conference, the African American Mayors Association, and our annual meeting, as we're focused on our mayors, our cities, equitable and inclusive growth. This conference gives us the opportunity not only to fellowship, but to focus on our nation's challenges of the day. Whether that's rebuilding from a natural disaster, focusing on public safety, understanding that climate change is real, closing the racial wealth gap, ensuring that there's continue to be a skilled workforce in any industry, but also understanding that we have to continue to be more innovative and intentional in the tech industry. This conference is going to be a 3-day conference, a gathering of Black mayors across this entire nation. It is notable to note that we represent 500 plus mayors, small, mid-size, and large.
Okay.
We are very proud
Okay,
that the top
500.
4 most populous cities are led by Black men and Black women. We'll go a step further. If you look at the stats, half of the top 20 are led by Black men and Black women. What that speaks to is that we are all mayors of an entire city. We are not the Black mayor of our city. We're mayors that happen to be Black. However, we do come to the table with a unique perspective of understanding marginalized communities and what marginalized communities need as they continue to move forward together. This conference is going to have a host of executives from the public and private sector. We're excited about a number of different folks who will be here today. Names like Governor Wes Moore, the nation's only Black governor to date. Robert F. Smith, one of the richest Black men in America, I dare say even in the world. We'll be focused on a number of different policy sessions, whether it's infrastructure, transportation, health, housing, community development, public safety, police accountability, as well as technology and small business. We're also excited that we are commanding this conference with a number of cabinet secretaries that are going to be visiting with us today. I won't dare to list that entire list, but we're very proud that our dear friend, Madam Vice President Kamala Harris, will be with her later on this evening at the Vice President's residence, and we know how special that is with us today. And then we'll move forward with clearly being very supportive of President Biden and his administration and spending some time with his administration throughout this time. That being said, I'm now going to introduce to you Madam First Vice President Sean Patterson Howard, who is continuing to lead the city of Mount Vernon, New York, and we're so grateful for her leadership. She's going to speak about a number of different grants that we've been fostering relationships with, as well as resources.
Okay, great. So,
thank you so much.
Great. This is great. So basically, I think this is great. So I'm going to be following information coming out of this conference. And I'm going to, this is a lot. This is a pretty lengthy speech. So I'm going to be getting into that. Your mayor, if you have, okay, so he said 500. So 80 of those are in DC. So that's really, really, really good to know as well. So I'm going to be, sharing news and information on that. I know it's really, 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 really late. It is 420 Eve. I keep reiterating that. If you can catch those codes. But hopefully, you all have a great week. I hope to continue to do my broadcast. Whenever I can, I'm going to make the best of it. When we do it at night, it's going to have a different feel and look, I see. Not so sunny. But, yeah. So I'm so appreciative. I really wanted to get caught up on Sudan, what was happening there. That is not a good look or a situation right now. But it is what it is. And so I'm going to keep a close eye on it. I'm going to talk to people about it. And we'll talk about the relevancy as things progress, but it's important to at least know what's going on. So I thank you all for tuning in with me, the news at night. I just like to catch up before, I call it a day. And, it's kind of still early. I'm like, I can go 2 hours. I can do it. But I just wanted to get caught up on that. And look, it's 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. hour over in Khartoum. And that ceasefire is not looking like it's going to hold, unfortunately. So, yes, my thoughts and prayers and my meditation and my consecration and, just really just keeping that in mind. And hopefully I'll hear soon. But if I don't, I know the internet's probably down. They said the electricity is down. That's not good. So hopefully they can feel us in spirit, that we are thinking of them in Sudan. And some people do care about geopolitics, and some people do care about global issues and how melanated people are affected all throughout the world. And I don't have to claim African to be interested in African affairs. I don't see anyone else talking about this. So, I'm going to. And if I'm the only one, then so be it. I've had a chance to tour this area, so I know the difference between what's real, what's not, and how to read in between the lines. Heba Morgan, I'm going to say this. She started off, if you've seen her report, at a 5-star hotel. Her most recent up-to-date report for Al Jazeera, she was in some type of office space. I've toured this area, so electricity is extremely special there. So look at you always coming in. You always say, hey, she's finally here. It's 420 Eve, and so I'm going to plant something because I'm like, hey, we're going to get some better sunlight. But I'm also planting some positive seeds that we all progress this year in good faith and glad tidings. And may you have a prosperous spring. May the Mother, Goddess, Earth, love, and light just come into your life, coming out of that winter into the spring, and new beginnings and new things. So, yes, I'll be sure to give you a call. Yes. I know. Look, we gotta catch up. Yeah, we got a lot to talk about. And look, I'm doing the news at night. It's a different feel, different types of light. I had to get this lighting together, but and share with you the news from Sudan. So I'm going to, dig in. We still got the mayor's budget to go through, and that's fun. And I've been trying to get the news out. So like I said, whether you listen live or later, whether you are with me on Facebook or YouTube, I appreciate every view, every like, every comment. And these are the stories I care about. This has been another edition of Melanated News You Can Use. I've been your host, Lady Lila Brown. And until next time, good night and good luck.